from the fiberology lab, and today we're going to be talking about curved piecing, and I'm going to be giving you a quick demo on how we do it. This is featuring the Pivot quilt pattern by Modern Handicrafter, and this is the pattern and kit we will be selling. But I wanted to show you a quick demo on curved piecing because I know it's a little bit scary and it goes against some of our quilting basic rules that we learned early on. Okay, the first thing I want to discuss is your pattern and templates and cutting. So first of all, there are templates and rulers out there. The ones I've got right here are for this pattern in particular. It comes with the pattern. You put it on, I'm using cardstock. You could put it on anything you want. I recommend cardstock or heavier because these will get used. As you can see, they are well used. So cardstock or heavier, you could even go ahead and glue it onto a piece of cardboard if you wanted to make it thicker, if you know you're going to be making this quilt again, which I think I will because the pattern itself comes in several different sizes. So it's really fun. But these are what we're going to be using. Usually with the curves, you're going to get a kind of clamshell piece and an arch piece. So let me show you guys. This one, the clamshell is pretty self-explanatory. You're going to line it up on the edges of whatever size the pattern gives you, trace your curve, and then cut it out. But what I wanted to show you guys was the arch piece. This one is a little bit trickier, and the pattern does lay it out for you very well, but I'm going to show you some tricks and tips. I didn't bring my coffee over here, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That would have been a good coffee sip time. Okay. Some tips and tricks that I learned after cutting out a bajillion of these. Bajillion. So what you want to do, you start out, like I said, on cardstock. This will make your life a whole lot easier, okay? You've got your strip. They'll tell you how to cut it out in the pattern, the size and everything. And obviously the print side is going to be right side up, always. You're going to lay it on your fabric. Now, this isn't a problem with this piece exactly, but on my other piece, it was cut selvage to selvage. So you want to make sure that you're not putting your piece on the selvage. You want to pull it over just a little bit. I'm going to pretend like we have some selvage on here. And what I did, hold it down. And I'm using a ballpoint pen so you guys can see. Use any marking tool that you like, but I'm using this one today so that you guys can see. And just trace that line. Hold your fabric and your template down very gently. And so there's the line where I would start. Now, one tip I suggest is using something heavy, a pattern weight. I've got my pin holder right here. This was perfect to hold it down while I'm tracing. And this just freed up a hand so I could pinch down these edges when they started to curl up. So just very carefully go around, very gently. And there you go. Now, once you're done with that, you're going to take this and flip it around, and this is going to maximize your fabric. So instead of, just doing one, we're going to go ahead and flip this around, and you want to get as close as possible to the other piece, but leave yourself room to cut. So maximize, get nice and close, but you do know your limits. So I'm going to use my weight again, and I like to start on the straight edge if I have one, just to get it lined up, and that way if I knock it or move it, I already have that as a reference. Because surprise, that happens. So we got that edge, and then just going to very gently take these around, get that curve. And you can see why it's so important to have cardstock or heavier, because you are bumping up your pin right up against that. Okay, so when I remove this, as you'll see, I've got two pieces from this one little rectangle of fabric. When I go to line it up again, I can just line this straight edge up with this, and I'll have two cuts in one, so you can start over. Now, in the pattern, it does say you can cut with scissors or a rotary cutter. That scares me with a rotary cutter. So I just used scissors. I cut these little squares apart, made a stack. turned on a podcast, and set and cut forever. So I recommend scissors with these. You've got these small little cuts down here. You're very close. If you put the time into tracing these, take your time, use scissors. All right, guys, that's it for our tracing and template part. Next up, I'll be talking about some of the other things like pinning and sewing. Thank you. Sissy here again. Next, we're going to be talking about once you get your pieces cut out. We've got the arch piece and the clamshell piece. And again, after doing millions of these, I've got some tips and tricks to show you. One thing that I will be saying over and over again is to go slowly, and don't be afraid to pull pins out and repin or move stuff around. This is not a fast process. This is not a, I would say this is not a weekend quilt. This is not weekend, you know, I've got a baby shower to go to, quick, I need to make a quilt. Take your time, enjoy the process, get your audiobook, your podcast, your show, your music, whatever you like going, and relax. So you've got your two pieces. One of the tips I got online was actually, somebody said that the one thing they knew about curved piecing was smile up. And let me show you what that means. The smile piece, smiling, is going to go on the top. And that is because we are going to get lots and lots of ripples and pleats and tucks here. And so to maneuver it on your machine, you want the flat side down. So I'll show you that in a minute. So always remember, this side is going to go on top. Now, what I did, you want to mark the centers of your pieces. And how I did that, very simply, was I folded them in half. I took my little roller. You can use your finger too, that's fine. And I just did a little hardcore little pressing there so I would know. And I did mine opposites so they would nest. I'll show you that in just a second here. So I've got my little center markings here. And so when I put my pieces together, those little guys will nest right in the center. And I just want to make sure my point is pointing right to the other one. Just make sure it's straight. And I'm going to put a pin, first of all, in that center one. Now, here's where our first quilting instinct is. You're going to have to just fight it, guys. We are not going to start from the center and pin out. We are going to start at the sides. So first of all, we're going to pin this edge flat down here. So we're going to bring one side over, if you guys can see that. We're going to bring this over to the side. Let me get over here where I can manipulate it. And I want to line that edge up. And I'm going to pin that right there. Pin that side. And then I'm going to do the same with the other side. And you can stretch it a little bit to get it around there. But don't pin the inside yet. Pin this side. And since we cut on the bias, there is some stretch, and you'll see how that's going to work out. So once I've got these, this is another thing, guys. You're just going to have to fight it. We're going to be stretching our fabric just a little bit, okay? So I know we're not supposed to do that, but for curved piecing, you need to. So what I did is I would start and I would pin between this pin and this pin. So I would find the center part between these two and stick a pin in it if I can. Right there. Center. And then I do it on this side too. And like I said, go slowly, take your time, stretch the fabric, make sure it's flat. In there. Now, you could stop here, but I didn't. I wanted more pins because you can see we've got these huge waves coming up that will get in your way. So what I did is I went ahead and just pinned between those. And it wasn't a big deal when I was sewing because you have to go slow around these curves anyway. So it's not a big deal to have the extra pins. It's not a problem. You're not flying through it, so. And I think this really helped keep my piecing accurate, because you are stretching that fabric and it does want to go back. But you don't want it to, because we got stuff to do. Curves to make. All right, guys. So we've got that pinned down, as you can see, and you can see why we put this part side up, because it's very bumpy and you want that on top because you can manipulate it. One other thing is when you get your pieces cut, your top arch piece is going to look shorter than your curved piece when you put them together, right sized up. That's because it's supposed to stretch. So don't freak out. They're supposed to be like that. And it will stretch to fit, I promise, if you did it properly. All right, now we are ready to go to the sewing machine. And I will meet you over there. All right, we are over at the machine, guys. Remember, we got all these pins in here, and we're gonna go very, very slowly. First thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna slow my machine down just a little bit. If you are a speed sewer, you might wanna go ahead and slow it down. Put this under here. Once I get it in here, I'm gonna take that pin away. All right, so this is where you need to go very slowly. Take your time. And don't be afraid to stop and start. Let me get these pins out of the way. Stop and start, take your time. Use your fingers to kind of hold these pleats back so that they don't end up under your needle. Go slowly. You can go slower than this. I've just done so many of these by now that I can go a little bit faster, but your first few, you should definitely go as slow as you need to. There is no rush. So I'm just gonna use my fingers to stretch that out a bit. Taking my time, keeping those pleats out of the way. Some of them will get very close to your needle, but as long as they are not under there and getting sewn into your curve, you are good. And this is why we pin so much, because then we don't have to work it as hard. All right.
Zoom out a little bit.
So now that that is done, you can see my block here. And what I'll do is I'll take this to the ironing board and press it out like this. No need to clip your seam allowance. Just press really well, gently, don't stretch, just press. And there is your block.
I would recommend another tool if you are, for those pleats like you were saying under the needle, if they use like a stiletto.
If you have a stiletto handy, that would help. If you're like me and you've got some fat fingers, a stiletto would definitely work better. I keep meaning to get a higher quality stiletto. I don't like
use your seam ripper.
Mine, yeah, use something else. You can use just the back end of a pin or something, something else if your fingers aren't quite working. But just something to hold those pleats out of the way while you are sewing.
Excellent.
There you have it.
Thank you so much, Miss Sissy.
You're welcome.